Two strangers posed as pop stars, winning a Grammy for hits they never sang. With over $500 million in sales built on a lie, the Milli Vanilli scandal exposed the music industry's darkest secret until tragedy struck. How did fake voices, corporate greed, and a producer's scheme unravel into the most infamous fraud in Grammy history? The truth behind Grammy winners exposed as complete frauds, Milli Vanilli, is messier and more devastating than you think. Frank Farian watched the charts from his Munich studio, searching for the next formula hit. He had already built Boney M into a disco empire by hiding the real singers behind a more marketable face. Now, with the dance scene shifting and his old formula losing steam, Farian needed something fresh, and he found it in an unlikely place, a club record out of Baltimore. In 1987, a group called Newmarks released Girl You Know It's True, a catchy, beat-driven track that started as a local favorite but soon made its way across the Atlantic. German DJs picked up the single through club imports, spinning it in underground venues until it caught Farian's ear. He saw the commercial potential instantly. But instead of negotiating or crediting the original creators, Kevin Liles, DJ Spin, Bill Petaway Jr., Rodney Holloman, and Kai Adeyemo, he simply appropriated the song. Farian re-recorded it in his own studio, swapping out the Baltimore vocals for a slicker, more international sound using session pros like Brad Howell and Charles Shaw. The business logic was cold and precise. Farian didn't want musicians with creative demands or unpredictable egos. He wanted control. By keeping the master recordings, the publishing rights, and the group name in his own hands, he could dictate every aspect of the project. The frontmen, he decided, would be chosen for their image, not their voices. As with Boney M, the real talent would remain in the shadows, paid a flat fee and sworn to silence. The faces on the album cover and the music videos would be whoever best fit the fantasy Farian wanted to sell. This was more than just a cover version. Farian's approach was a calculated system. Acquire a promising song, recut it with anonymous session singers, and then build an entirely new act around the finished product. The session singers signed away their rights, the original writers were left in the dark, and the profits flowed back to Farian's companies. By the time Milli Vanilli's version of Girl You Know It's True hit the German airwaves in 1988, the song's American roots were buried beneath layers of contracts and legal ownership. The original Newmarks creators only received proper credit years later, after the scandal broke wide open. The strategy wasn't just about hiding the real singers, it was about building a facade so perfect, so market-friendly, that no one would question it. Farian's model depended on finding frontmen who looked the part, danced well, and could sell the illusion in music videos and live shows. Never mind if they couldn't sing a note. The entire operation was engineered for maximum profit and minimum risk. If the faces on stage failed or fell out of line, they could be replaced without touching the music or the money. This stripped-down assembly line approach to pop stardom set the stage for what came next. Two young men, hungry for fame, stepping into roles they could never truly own. The machinery was already in place. All it needed was the right faces to put on the cover. Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan arrived in Munich with little more than ambition and a hunger for something bigger. Both were broke, drifting between odd jobs and club gigs, hoping for a break. Frank Farian offered them a chance, but the offer came wrapped in legalese and urgency. The contract was placed in front of them without a lawyer in sight. They were told to sign quickly if they wanted to be stars. The advance, $4,000, split between them. It felt like a windfall, but by the time they paid for new clothes, rent, and a few nights out, the money was gone. What they didn't realize was that every cent spent was actually a debt, recoupable against future earnings. If they walked away, they'd owe it all back. The contract locked them in, binding them to Farian's vision. There was no mention of creative control, no right to the music, no royalties from record sales. Their role was to perform, to look the part, and to keep quiet. Farian's operation ran on secrecy and separation. Rob and Fab were never introduced to the real singers. Studio sessions were off limits. They were coached on choreography, image, and how to mime with precision. Any questions about vocals were brushed aside. When Rob or Fab pushed for details, Farian reminded them of the contract and the debt. The message was clear: play along or lose everything. Rob's background made him especially vulnerable to this kind of leverage. Having grown up in German foster homes, isolated and often bullied, he was desperate for acceptance and a sense of belonging. Farian's promise of fame and family hit a nerve. Fab, driven by dreams shaped in Paris and Guadeloupe, saw the deal as a ticket out of obscurity. Both men clung to the hope that if they played by the rules, they could eventually earn a real place in the music world. But the rules were written to keep them dependent. Every appearance, every photo shoot, every press event was another opportunity for Farian's team to reinforce the boundaries. The contract's fine print included strict confidentiality clauses. If Rob or Fab spoke out, they risked lawsuits and financial ruin. The more successful Milli Vanilli became, the tighter the grip. Farian controlled the money, the music, and the narrative. Rob and Fab, trapped by debts and promises, were forced deeper into the illusion, with no clear way out. Behind the locked doors of Frank Farian's Munich studio, Milli Vanilli's biggest hits took shape in secret. The voices that filled radios and clubs belonged not to the men on the album covers, but to a carefully managed roster of session singers. Brad Howell, an American with a background in gospel, became the main voice behind the group's signature sound. His steady, soulful delivery powered tracks like Blame It on the Rain and Baby Don't Forget My Number. John Davis, another American expatriate, contributed to later songs and harmonies, while Charles Shaw's rap verses on Girl You Know It's True set the tone for the group's early success. The Rocco twins, Linda and Jody, provided the layered background vocals that gave the records their polish. The process ran with strict discipline. Singers arrived at different times, rarely meeting each other. Recording sessions were scheduled to keep everyone apart, and any mention of their work was forbidden. Farian's lawyers handed out non-disclosure agreements before anyone stepped up to the microphone. The contracts were blunt: talk and you're out, possibly facing legal trouble. Most accepted the terms. The pay was solid, but the work was invisible. Session singers signed away credit for a flat fee, knowing their voices would never appear in liner notes or music videos. Brad Howell's story mirrored the system's demands. Years spent in German studios had made him a reliable presence, trusted to deliver vocals quickly and quietly. Farian relied on Howell to meet deadlines and never reveal his role. After each session, Howell faded back into anonymity, his contributions known only to Farian, a few engineers, and select insiders. The divide between the real singers and the public faces was total. Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan never entered the vocal booth. Their days were filled with dance rehearsals, wardrobe fittings, and learning to mime to songs they hadn't sung. Farian enforced this separation with unwavering control. When Charles Shaw threatened to expose the truth in 1989, Farian paid him $150,000 in hush money and replaced his vocals with John Davis on later releases. The warning was unmistakable. Anyone risking the secret would be paid off, replaced, or erased. The assembly line approach erased authorship. Session singers powered the hits, but their names disappeared behind contracts and threats. For Farian, the system kept credit and profit in his hands. For the singers, it was work that would echo worldwide, but always in silence. July 21st, 1989. Milli Vanilli stood under the hot stage lights at the MTV Club tour in Bristol, Connecticut, ready to perform Girl You Know It's True. 4 #1 singles had made Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan the faces of a global pop phenomenon. The crowd pressed in, expecting perfection. But as the backing track rolled, something went wrong. The words, "Girl, you know it's big," began to repeat again and again, stuck in an endless loop. Rob froze. For a few seconds, he tried to keep moving, but panic set in. He dropped his microphone and sprinted off stage, leaving Fab alone in front of thousands. MTV host Julie Brown cursed, then chased after Rob, urging him back into the spotlight. Technicians scrambled behind the scenes, but the damage was done. The audience, at first confused, started to murmur. Some thought it was just a technical error, but insiders backstage exchanged knowing glances. The flawless illusion had cracked. In the days that followed, whispers spread through the music press and TV studios. Journalists who had already noticed Rob and Fab's thick European accents began to question how they could deliver such polished, American-sounding vocals on record. Late-night hosts pounced. In Living Color aired a parody called Milli Vanilli, and comedians across the country made the duo a punchline. The press started to dig deeper, asking why the group never performed live without backing tracks. MTV replayed the glitch, and radio DJs joked about the broken record performance. For fans who had bought into the fantasy, the moment was unsettling. For the industry, it was a warning shot. Rob felt the pressure most intensely. He later described the experience as the moment he realized things were spiraling out of control. Behind the scenes, handlers tried to contain the fallout, insisting it was a one-off mishap, but the questions kept coming. The more Milli Vanilli tried to act unfazed, the more the suspicion grew. The group's meteoric rise had depended on absolute secrecy and perfect choreography. Now, a single technical slip had turned private deception into public speculation. The mask was slipping, and Rob Pilatus knew it wouldn't be long before the truth caught up with them. Frank Farian's public admission in November 1990 sent shockwaves through the industry. Within hours of his confession, Arista Records executives scrambled behind closed doors, fielding urgent calls from New York to Los Angeles. Memos circulated warning staff to suspend all Milli Vanilli promotions. By the next morning, the group's catalog was pulled from stores, platinum plaques were stripped from label walls, and shipments of "Girl, You Know It's True" were halted mid-route. The Recording Academy moved just as swiftly. On November 19th, trustees convened in an emergency session, voting unanimously to rescind Milli Vanilli's Grammy for Best New Artist. Michael Green, Academy president, called it an act of fraud on a scale never seen before. The award was physically returned, a first in Grammy history. The press descended on Arista's Manhattan office. Cameras crowded the lobby, demanding answers about who knew what and when. Label spokespeople issued carefully worded statements, distancing the company from Farian's scheme. At a hastily arranged press conference, reporters pressed for details about the real singers and the extent of the deception. Arista's legal team dodged specifics, but the message was clear. The company would cooperate with investigations and offer remedies to consumers. Behind the scenes, lawyers mapped out a settlement plan. Facing more than 24 consumer lawsuits, Arista agreed to a national refund program. Fans could claim $3 per album or $2 per cassette, no questions asked. The settlement pool reached up to $2 million, but out of millions of buyers, fewer than 10,000 filed claims before the March 1992 deadline. Most fans kept their records, but the legal precedent was set. Attorneys collected the bulk of the payout, over $675,000, while the label absorbed the reputational damage. For Farian, the fallout was both public and private. His company shielded itself behind layers of contracts, but the commercial machine he built was dismantled overnight. Session singers demanded recognition, but the industry closed ranks. The Milli Vanilli scandal became a case study in damage control as labels and producers rewrote their playbooks for handling fraud. The illusion of pop perfection had collapsed, and the cost was measured not just in dollars, but in trust. Rob Pilatus spent his final years chasing a second chance that never arrived. After the Grammy was stripped and the world turned its back, he drifted between rehab centers, jail cells, and cheap hotels across Europe. Addiction tightened its grip as each failed comeback deepened his sense of exile. In 1993, Rob and Fab released an album under their real names, Rob and Fab. It sold just 2,000 copies in the United States. The industry that once celebrated them now refused to listen, and the public saw only the scandal, never the men behind it. By 1997, a new opportunity seemed possible. Studio sessions in Germany meant to launch a true comeback, this time with Rob and Fab singing every note themselves. The album, known as Back in an Attack, was nearly finished. But most days, Rob missed recording, checked into clinics, or vanished for weeks at a time. Producers and friends described him as haunted by regret, desperate for validation he couldn't reclaim. On April 2, 1998, Rob Pilatus was found dead in a Frankfurt hotel room. He was 33. The official cause, accidental overdose. The album remains locked away, its master tapes the subject of legal disputes and private vaults never released to the public. Fab Morvan survived. He rebuilt, collaborating with the very session singers whose voices once made Milli Vanilli famous. But the shadow of the scandal followed him, and every interview circled back to questions of blame, shame, and the meaning of authenticity in pop music. Frank Farian, the architect of it all, continued to defend his choices, insisting that he only did what the industry demanded. He pointed to acts like Black Box and C+C Music Factory, where uncredited singers powered hits while models fronted videos. Today, the debate has shifted. Major artists like Drake openly use ghostwriters. Auto-tune and digital enhancement are standard tools. Lip syncing, once a career-ending scandal, is now routine for televised performances. Critics ask why Milli Vanilli alone became the scapegoat, while the system that created them never changed. The hypocrisy remains. The industry still trades in image and illusion, just with new technology and different faces. Rob Pilatus' story and the lost album that bears his voice stand as reminders of the cost, measured not just in dollars or headlines, but in lives. In November 1990, Milli Vanilli became the first act in Grammy history to have their award revoked, after it was revealed that Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan never sang on their recordings. The duo sold over 7 million albums in the US and more than 30 million singles worldwide, all while hidden vocalists like Brad Howell and John Davis supplied the real voices behind the hits. Despite Arista Records offering refunds and lawsuits reaching federal court, only a fraction of buyers sought compensation, and Frank Farian continued to deny full responsibility. The unreleased 1997 comeback album remains locked away, and many contract details are still undisclosed. Today, industry controversies over ghostwriting and auto-tune echo the questions raised by Milli Vanilli. The evidence leaves no doubt. A calculated deception changed music history, exposed industry hypocrisy, and ended in tragedy. The full truth behind Milli Vanilli's rise and fall remains a warning about the cost of manufactured fame